I had to step back and say, is this what I really want, or is this just what I think I should be doing? At this point in my life, I'm like, I think I should be doing what I want to be doing. I looked at how different learning models, a lot of time looking at different learning models while in the education leadership program. And I said, the one that was really intriguing me, and going back to this Designing Your Life book, where my energy really was in the deeper learning space and self-directed learning. And I didn't see any schools doing that, any public schools doing that. And I didn't see any appetite for schools to want to do that. So there's a lot of pressures against that type of learning model. And I was like, hey, if this is what I think, what I would want for my child, then I should put that out in the world myself and create it.
Hello, and welcome to the New Mission Career Transition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Caprellian, and I'm joined by my co-host and sister, Alexandra Caprellian. We interview service members that transition to new careers and the DoD and civilian HR professionals that provide lessons learned to help you transition with confidence. Our guest today is Matt Dreier, a former Marine officer who went into the education field. He had some experience on assignments at ROTC units and ended up finding his passion in making a difference in the lives of children and families, and wanted to pursue education and started his own academy, the PACE Academy, which operates off of a fundamentally different education paradigm. We talk about that. We talk about his transition story, and I'll tell you, I was fascinated. Just stay tuned because I promise you're going to find it interesting too. Matt Dreier, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
Hey, Matt.
Oh, I'm excited. Got another Marine engineer on the line. It's like I'm starting my own clique and I'm making it public. I found Matt through LinkedIn, and I'm excited because we're going to talk about education. The education domain in the post-military life. I know that we have listeners that sometimes think about going to become teachers, maybe sometimes school administrators. So, Matt, your background and what you're going to talk about as far as being the co-founder of PACE Academy in Virginia is I'm really excited to talk about it because, quite frankly, there are some things I still don't understand about the non-typical education paradigm that you utilize at PACE Academy. But before we get into that, I'd like the listeners to know a little bit more about their guest. So if you could tell us, where did you grow up and how did you get into the military?
Yeah, first of all, great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for the opportunity. I grew up just north of New York City in Westchester County. And after high school, I was bouncing around a little bit, working odd jobs, going to community college, and I needed a little bit of direction in my life, as many young people do. And so I walked into the recruiter's office and basically signed up right there on the spot. After a stint in the reserves as a combat engineer, I was going to college then, and I met a second lieutenant when I was going through engineer school, and I was asking him a bunch of questions about what life is like as an officer, and he kind of intrigued me. So I applied to the officer candidate school program and went through the platoon leaders class and came out and decided that I wanted to continue my life as a combat engineer, and was fortunate enough to land that role as a 1302 and hit the fleet as a combat engineer officer. So really exciting to get my first choice out of the basic school and begin my Marine Corps career.
That's great. Fellow castle builder. All right.
I was about to say, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, tell us, give us a whirlwind tour of where your time as a combat engineer officer took you.
Yeah, so I started out in 3rd Marine Division at Combat Engineering Company as a platoon commander. Did that for a year, was super grateful for that experience. And from there, I went to 1st Combat Engineer Battalion in Camp Pendleton, and was, again, really fortunate to work with a great group of people. From there, I was able to, I went to ROTC duty and at the University of Rochester, and that really kind of piqued my interest in education and helping to develop not only, Marines, but aspiring leaders as well. So 3 years at the University of Rochester, and during that time, I was fortunate to do 2 summers as a platoon commander down at Officer Candidate School as well. So kind of getting the full, well, not the full experience, but a pretty broad experience developing, our next generation of leaders. And about that time, so while I was there, the OIF kicked off, and I went to Expeditionary Warfare School after my time on ROTC duty, and from there to 8th Engineer Support Battalion, and went out to support my first OIF deployment, and was, again, super fortunate to be put in a leadership position and stood up a route clearance detachment there, as well as providing security for the explosive ordnance disposal teams attached to our unit. And back to lovely Camp Lejeune from there, and gearing up for another deployment. Now, this time I went back as the operations and the executive officer for the battalion. So another great tour. A lot of, got to see a lot of the progress that was being made at the time, doing construction as part of the surge. And from there, back to the States to lovely Monterey, California for a Naval Postgraduate School and a payback tour with U.S. Transportation Command. So kind of got out of the Marine Corps element for a little while, but quickly back into it, back to 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force from Scott Air Force Base, working at the 3MEF staff, first as an exercise planner, as the lead Philippines planner, and next as the MEF engineer officer, and then finishing up as the deputy director for logistics. And after that, it was to the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, as a military professor in the Joint Maritime Operations Department. So that's a quick 22-year career for you there, Chris.
Oh, yeah. No, hey, that's perfect. What did you get your degree in at NPS?
I got it in IT management.
Okay, cool. And your payback tour, how did you use that? Or did you?
Yeah, I used it at Transportation Command working in the J6. So I showed up there as a project manager. They did a base consolidation there and built a bunch of different buildings. So worked as a project manager in the IT section. And then I actually got into the IT stuff a little bit over my head in the enterprise architecture division, and then wrapped up as the executive assistant to the J6.
All right. I'm trolling your LinkedIn profile. I do that often. So I just want to do a quick recap because I find this somewhat inspiring. You're a Marine Corps engineer officer. You have a BA in English, an MS in IT management, and an MBA from University of Rochester. So well educated. And I say that because as a fellow Marine Corps engineer officer without an engineering degree and a PE, sometimes the question is where does my skill set and where does my education sometimes fit into my future? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you had those same concerns when you were getting ready to transition.
Yeah, for sure. And, I was fortunate to have these education opportunities while on ROTC duty, to earn my MBA at the, very grateful to the University of Rochester for providing that opportunity at no cost, and then to Monterey as well. And when I looked to transition out of the Marines, I'm like, okay, what do I want to do, and where do my skill sets align, and where does my education align? And I think the project management aspect of the IT management degree certainly made sense. And So I actually said, okay, well, how do I leverage that? That degree is kind of dated. My experience at Transcom was kind of limited. Obviously, working with the in the engineer field, especially on the MEF staff, allowed me to do a lot of project management there and work with the Marine Corps base folks a lot. But honestly, I went back and I looked at where the gap was. And I thought the gap was in some kind of credential on top of the experience and the degree. So I earned my project management professional certificate as well, thinking that it was a pretty much natural fit to go from a Marine engineer officer to a project management professional role in the civilian world.
So at what point in time did you realize that you wanted to transition out of the Marine Corps to retire?
Yeah, probably when I was in Okinawa and on the MEF staff, I realized that my son was getting older, and as everybody here knows, listening to this podcast knows, moving every 2 to 3 years really puts a significant stress and strain on the family. So looking at his age, I knew that I wanted to at least have him attend one high school only. So I just did the math and figured that retiring from Okinawa, while I've seen plenty of people do it and do it successfully, was not something that I wanted to try to accomplish. So when the opportunity came to teach at the Naval War College, I thought that what a great experience that would be. And then also what a great transition point that would be as well.
I think I know, but could you clarify where is the Naval War College?
It's in Newport, Rhode Island.
So at least staying in the same region of the U.S. as where you grew up. Did you have a geographic idea or a geographic location in mind on where you wanted to retire to?
So even growing up in New England, I knew that I wasn't going to stay there. Just cost of living and weather. When I was at EWS in Quantico, I really fell in love with the area. So did my wife. She's from Southern California, and she had really no interest in putting roots down in New England long term. So just for the climate, if nothing else, we were looking at Virginia. And so some of my family had migrated south as well to the Richmond area, and looking at how busy Quantico is now and the traffic and all that, we decided that that was no longer what we're looking for. So we made the decision. We prioritized being close to family and the climate, and then so we chose Richmond.
I'm looking at Sis right now, and we're smiling because our parents are actually getting ready to move out of California into Richmond.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, they live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's not just the real estate prices. It's all prices. It's just off. It's out of control. Plus, they want to be closer to us and their granddaughter. So, yeah, they're heading that way too. Probably for the same reasons. They had a checklist of things that they didn't want to deal with and things that they did. And Richmond seemed like a great location. But while you were at the Naval War College, did you have a game plan, in your mind at the time, like what you wanted to do or how you were going to execute your retirement and your transition?
Initially, no. And it's as the reason for this podcast, it can be really intimidating, especially for somebody who's spent, basically their entire adult life in uniform, and trying to figure out what to do next was, it was a little overwhelming. So what I did a lot of research, a lot of people who went before us, put a lot of really good information out about how they managed their transition. So I ate that up, and people put, just like every great military officer will do, they'll put together, a 5-year plan and, have milestones and plan of action and all that. So I started reading a bunch of that, and I got pretty, again, overwhelmed by what I heard people say is trying to figure out that one true thing that they needed to do after retirement. So what I mean by that is that they had to get it exactly right the first time. And I'm like, how could you possibly do that? And other folks I saw, go take the natural path into the contracting work and the defense industry and all that, or government service. A lot of folks that I worked with at the Naval War College transitioned into civilian professors there. I knew that I wanted to do something different than defense. Not that there's anything wrong with doing defense, continuing that, but I wanted to try spreading my wings, doing something else. With my experience working at ROTC, my degree in English education, and at the War College, it seemed like a natural alignment to go into the education sector. But that wasn't predetermined. Like I earned my PMP, I had a couple of other degrees to leverage. But one of the things that really helped me was the Designing Your Life book, which I picked up, thankfully, and that provided a framework of actually, looking at where your energy is while you're at work, what your priorities are, and, different ways to envision. It wasn't made for, transitioning military people, but it seems like it was, because it really provided a great format to actually, with workbooks and worksheets and timelines and all that, to follow it, to help you figure out what are multiple great outcomes after retirement, just not trying to determine the exact one.
And that's the book, Designing Your Life. Because
Yes.
I've got it. After we had our brief conversation, I ordered it. It's sitting on my desk. It's in the queue. I've got about like 2 books in the queue, and I'm not hurting for time, but I'm glad it ended up being a great resource. But what other resources helped you during your transition that you leveraged?
So going from advice in the columns and the blogs and all that, plus the book, was really getting out and talking to people that worked in the industry that I might want to work in. So I don't know what it was like to be a school superintendent or a district superintendent, but I'm like, hey, that's something I might want to do. So, leverage the network, leverage LinkedIn, and go and meet with these people. So having a lot of conversations, just 15 minutes. Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And not only did that help me understand, better the industries or the areas that I was exploring, but it also enhanced my network quite a bit too. So once I actually did decide on a path forward, I wasn't starting from scratch on that. So I read a lot, I talked to a lot of people, and I kind of got over my fear of cold calling people and, inviting strangers to coffee. That helped a lot.
How hard was it? As far as making the initial connection from, I don't know if you have a ratio from the number of people you tried to reach out to the actual number of people that connected with you and then gave you the time to ask your questions.
Yeah, I'd say I was really fortunate that I probably, was batting, 800 or something, because, whenever I reached out to somebody, they typically responded and took the time. And I attribute that to, I forget where I read it, or heard it somewhere, but if you're going to take somebody's time, if you're going to ask for somebody's time, then I made it very specific why I was asking them. What was it about them that really interested me? And to put that into the email, or to reach out and say, okay, I want to talk to this person. Who do I know in my network that knows them? If I don't know anybody there, are there people like them that could connect me with somebody like that? And then just being, very specific and very humble when reaching out to people. That helped immensely.
Were there any other programs? I know we talked briefly about a program that you utilized to kind of start your journey into education on the outside.
Yeah. So one of the paths that I looked at was, as I kind of alluded to, was becoming a leader in the education sector. Also, one of my paths was being a high school social studies teacher. So learning more about the education space kind of led me to a bunch of different paths, and I realized that I wanted to take this 20 plus years of experience and try to move the lever a little bit in favor of the education system. So how could I do that without starting over? I wasn't credentialed as a teacher, so I couldn't walk right into a classroom. I looked at the Troops to Teachers program, and depending on the state, that could be a very easy access for somebody who is interested in getting into the classroom. I also looked at education leadership programs, and I dove pretty deep into that. Because I think it's the leadership development aspect of it is super interesting, but also I saw that as a bridge, kind of similar to that PMP certificate, into gaining access into a domain that I didn't have a whole lot of experience in. So I looked at actual doctorate programs around the country to earn my education leadership degree. So I spent a long time doing that, and I met with a bunch of different folks at different universities, pretty much up and down the East Coast, and made the decision that I was going to apply to at least 5 of them. And that's what I did. And I was fortunate enough that Harvard accepted me and admitted me into their 3-year education leadership program.
Wow.
What was the program like?
Yeah.
What was Harvard like?
Yeah. Well, as a guy who went through community college and state school, it was a little eye-opening, but also it was different because, you've got all that mystique around it and all that. So big imposter syndrome for me to overcome. I had a couple other things. I was the oldest person in my cohort. The program that I entered, they take 25 folks a year mostly from the education sector, people who were mostly school principals or school founders, some folks from the nonprofit sector, advocacy sector, but very rarely, I think I was the second service member in the 9-year history of the program to be admitted in there. So very, very different than the military community for sure, but very intense and very rewarding. And I could probably say a little bit more about that later.
Okay. Well, what happened next? Like, you're in the program. How did that lead to, you go from the military into the Harvard Teaching Fellows program, and that's a doctoral program?
Yeah, so the education leadership program is the program I was in. While I was there, I was also a teaching fellow for one of the courses in that program.
Okay.
Which was the workplace lab for systems level leaders. And yeah, I would say that the benefit of the military experience that I was able to bring to the program, because I learned so much from my peers and professors and colleagues there. But one of the things that I'd say any military person that served even, just the minimum 4-year enlistment brings is the ability to think at the systems level. And that's was super important, super helpful there. So looking at not only the tactical fight right in front of you, but also, the long range vision of the organization, how to take tactical actions to achieve that strategic goal.
All right, cool. There is hope for me. There's hope. I'm a systems thinker. No, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that. So how did you get from the program and then out doing what you're doing now? If you could kind of lead us through that.
Sure. So the program is a 3-year program, 2 years in Cambridge, and then the 3rd year is a residency, and that residency can be anywhere in the country. So when I knew that I knew the geographical area that I wanted Richmond. And so then it was just a matter of finding somebody who was going to take a 40-something-year-old doctoral resident under their wing, and former Marine at that. So I was, again, your network is powerful. Make friends. One of my professors was the former Richmond public school superintendent. So she had a pretty wide network and very well respected in the area. And she connected me with the state superintendent of public education here. And put in a good word for me. I interviewed with him and ended up working at the Virginia Department of Education as part of my doctoral residency to meet the degree requirements.
Hmm. So what did that teach you, being on the outside and then being certainly at that level of education, not just local, but at the state?
Yeah, so it's I think we do a lot of translating or interpreting as military folks, like, okay, what level is this in, in the military? And you say, okay, well, this guy is definitely like at the general officer level, right? And he's an executive and he's making big decisions. So kind of looking at it through that lens, I was very interested in his thoughts on education, but also his thoughts on leadership and how he handled 132 different district superintendents within the state, plus the political aspect, working for the governor and all that. And this is during COVID, by the way. I moved down here in May of 2020 and did not step into the office except to get my badge and return my badge that I never used in the building. But I was fortunate enough to meet with the superintendent on a regular basis, not only just on Zoom, but we live pretty close to each other, so we'd actually meet up and like go for walks and all that. And then, seeing the education system, at least at the state level, certainly opened my eyes to the vastness of this domain and what is driving people and what the incentives are. And certainly COVID was a much different time in education than any other time. And people were going through the school reopenings and what that looked like, masks, no masks, all that stuff. And we saw it was great. I got to be in the room when a lot of those decisions were being made. So it was really, really cool to see that.
So did it inform you on what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do?
It did. But not right away. So I thought it made sense for me to go from the Virginia Department of Ed or any kind of large bureaucracy like that and either continue on in a bureaucracy or, branch out and try to be a district superintendent, which is the path that I thought I was on when I began this journey in education. And I was applying for positions as, assistant superintendent of this and assistant superintendent of that. Again, running into a issue with qualifications. I was not a certified teacher, so I could not be a certified district superintendent. I would have to have gotten a waiver from the guy I was working for, which he really wanted me to, but there was also some things that I would have had to have done to do that, which would have extended my education and my timeline. So I'm like, okay, I had to step back and say, is this what I really want, or is this just what I think I should be doing? At this point in my life, I'm like, I think I should be doing what I want to be doing. And what I wanted to be doing was making a difference in people's lives in education. And if I couldn't do that as a district superintendent, how could I do that? And I looked at how different learning models, a lot of time looking at different learning models while in the education leadership program. And I said, the one that was really intriguing me, and going back to this Designing Your Life book, where my energy really was in the deeper learning space and self-directed learning. And I didn't see any schools doing that, any public schools doing that. And I didn't see any appetite for schools to want to do that, to branch out into that domain. So there's a lot of pressures against that type of learning model. And I was like, hey, if this is what I think, what I would want for my child, then I should put that out in the world myself and create it. So after researching different learning models or different affiliations that were doing this kind of work, I landed on the Acton Academy affiliation and just fell in love with how they viewed learning, how it was all about human flourishing and trusting children and executive functioning and leadership skills, life skills. And I said, this is what education should be. And I grabbed my niece, who's pretty similar in age to me, and she shares, similar outlooks on education. And I said, "Hey, we got to do this." And so we applied, and we were accepted, and then the hard work began.
Applied and accepted.
Yeah. Applied and accepted. Wait a minute. What is the applied part? How long did that take? What was that like?
So the application to become an affiliate in Acton Academy it's pretty straightforward, and it's not time consuming, but what they're looking for is people who have a passion for this and also have credibility within their community. And that's my niece has, 10 times over. She's a small business owner in this area, and she's run a cooking school for children for the last 18 years. So I think she carried me over the line more than all my highfalutin degrees and military experience.
That's it's interesting. Not only family, but that's a key partnership in starting a future endeavor. Surrounding yourself with people that maybe have the strength that you don't have, like whether it's a business partner. I use business partner loosely, but generally speaking, that sounds like it was a good decision.
No, it was a great decision. We absolutely wouldn't be enjoying the success we are right now without her on the team. And I take a step back, again, keep going back to this Designing Your Life book. And one of the things they tell you is you got to create a board, an advisory board. So anybody, whether you're getting out after 4 years or 30 years, I can't recommend having that advisory board in your life. And for me, it was my sister, who was a HR professional for 25 years. It was her husband, who a project manager with his PMP, and a couple other close family members who knew me well enough, who know my strengths, my weaknesses, and who also weren't afraid to tell me when I was full of shit or I was, going down the wrong path. So really having people like that in your life was critical. And my niece, Kristen, is one of those people. And so she knew from, dozens of conversations around the coffee table or beers in the fire pit, we were very aligned on what our vision for what education should look like. So it was a very natural fit for us to embark on this together. And her expertise as a small business owner is what really allowed me to avoid a lot of mistakes and also tap into, she had a network already. So she knew all the people that we needed to talk to. And she probably recruited about, I think, half of our families our opening year this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. That's great. And then that's the birth of Pace Academy, an Acton affiliate. So,
yes, sir.
All right. We're up to kind of the present. So what is Pace Academy? And maybe, I think I had asked once before, is this like K through 5? What are we talking about? What's Pace Academy all about?
So Pace Academy, our goal is to help instill a love of learning, create lifelong independent learners. Our learning model takes the adult out of the central position of the school and puts us off to the side. So we are, instead of the sage on the stage, we're a guide on the side. We believe that children are much more capable than us adults typically give them credit for. And if we give them the opportunities and the tools that they can find their purpose in life and leverage their God-given talents to do good in the world. So that's what we're all about. And right now we're serving children ages 5 to 12. We have studios. So a lot of things that are different about our learning design, and this is aligned with the Acton model, is so we don't do grades. We don't do grade levels. So there's no K, there's no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do studios, which are mixed age, similar to a Montessori school. So we have a studio for ages 5 to 7 and another studio for ages 8 to 12. And next year, we're going to open our middle school equivalent studio for ages 12 and 13, and then a high school thereafter. So what we're looking for are families that are aligned with us, who are unafraid to break free of the traditional expectations of public school, who want something more for their children, and children who really want to come to school and want to learn. And we've been, it's crazy, Chris. We said that this is what we wanted, and we said this is what we can provide, and just 8 weeks in, we're seeing it, and the children are really taking ownership of the school. And I told them my job is to work myself out of a job, and they're helping me meet that goal.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
This is incredible. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, could you paint a picture of maybe what life is like in the day of a studio at the school?
Sure. So the children arrive between 8 and 8:30. That's drop off, and it's free time to do whatever they want. Then we start every morning with a Socratic discussion. So we're either, talking about, big life questions like what it means to be a good person. We typically do that with a scenario. And it's so interesting because this is so much like my time at the Naval War College with adults. And, we taught through the Socratic method there. And you think if it works with majors and lieutenant colonels, it definitely works. It works even better with 8-year-olds, I tell you. So we start every day with the Socratic discussion, and then they turn to their core skills time, so literacy and math, and that's all self-paced. So after that, it's recess. We spend about 2 hours a day outside. We have 15 acres of forest on the property that we're renting, and they just love it. They're immersed in it. They make forts. They have pine cone battles. It's everything that you would want in your childhood. And then we also do project-based learning. And so out of our 10 learners in our discovery studio, which is 8 to 12, they'll break up into teams and they'll actually work on different projects together. And a lot of times it's a competition. Sometimes it's collaboration. And then at the end of each 5 to 6 week session, they have what we call an exhibition of learning, where we bring the community in and they get to show off, however they decide, everything that they've learned over the past session. So because we don't do grades, everything is mastery based. So with their English and math, it's either 100% or you get to try over. But with the projects, it's really doing something meaningful and applicable in the world, and then showing that to not only your parents, but any experts that we invite in that have a chance to weigh in on what they learned or the project that they completed.
First of all, it's exciting. I look at the world and you see how businesses evolve over time, right? There's certain things that just no longer become relevant. So what happens? The market adapts. And that's how you get innovation in the private sector. But then you look at the education system, and the traditional education system has pretty much been in place for a pretty long period of time. Arguably, there have been some modifications, but certainly evolutionary, but not revolutionary. It seems revolutionary because it's a complete divergence from the standardized paradigm. When there are parents that are maybe a little bit skeptical about maybe enrolling their child into that type of program, what are the typical concerns that they have, and how do you address them?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you're right. It's something completely different. Everybody I've talked to who I've explained this model to is super excited about it. But they're like, well, how do you know kids are learning? Right. So that's the biggest concern. And I address that by like, well, first of all, you got to ask, like, what's important to learn? Is it important to know rote facts, to, recall memory? There are certain, things that have happened recently that makes that type of knowledge not that important anymore. So the things that we find important are the executive functioning skills. Can a child plan? Can they execute on that plan? Can they resolve conflicts? Can they negotiate? Can they, look out for their friends? Can they live their values? Can they think critically? So those are all the things that we prioritize in the school. Of course, we do the standard core skills of math, reading, science, social studies. And I would say if a parent is most concerned about those things, then we are probably not the learning environment for them, right? So we want children and families to be in the school that serves their needs. And if they're parents that are worried about their child getting into Harvard, and they're gonna, then maybe a college prep school is the best way to go. But if they're worried about their children adapting to the environment to where, the future jobs aren't even known yet, and they want their child to have the initiative and the agency to decide their own future and know how to access it, then we are absolutely the learning environment for them. So that's how I explain that. We're a really good fit for some people, and we're not for others, and that's fine.
I have a question. And how does this transfer into college? So what does that look like in the grand scheme of the timeline from a child? And you said that you were hoping to open up your high school equivalent grades soon. So how does that transfer from high school to college with your model?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's something that parents, I think, rightfully ask as well. So we can make transcripts. There are, I think, close to 300 of our Acton Academy affiliates throughout the world, and their graduates have gone into Ivy League and highly selective universities, the military. One, actually, the founder's son he's in flight school right now to be a naval aviator. He's a Marine. So it works. And making a transcript is not as difficult as you might imagine, because everything that we do is mastery based, though it's going to reflect that. And there is a mastery transcript consortium that kind of emerged over the last few years, which enables schools like ours to create portfolios and transcripts that are easily digestible by even the most competitive universities. So instead of just having that report card a child has when they're applying to college, they actually have the transcript plus a portfolio of their work that they've done in their high school equivalent years.
So maybe just Marine translation. When we're talking about, because it's mastery based, it's essentially like saying you're either getting the A or you're redoing it until you're getting the A.
That's it right?
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Hey,
yeah.
I mean, it's there. I mean, I keep, I get exposed. I think about my daughter. I think about some of her friends, and I could peel away like certain personality types of the kids that would probably be a great fit for that type of learning environment. Probably like a lot of kids that are like wicked smart, but in the traditional model, they don't perform very well because they're just not motivated to do it, because they're doing things that don't seem to have a lot of value. It just ends up being rote memorization. I don't know. Is that an accurate description of maybe some of the personality types of the kids that are in your program at Pace Academy?
Yeah, I would say that's a proportion of them. Others, so we have some children who were tested into the gifted programs at their other schools and were still bored. And because it was, maybe smaller class sizes, but not too dissimilar from the standard classroom experience. And others that we have two learners who have dyslexia, and they really struggled in the traditional school environment because they were expected to keep pace with all the children who don't have dyslexia. And the supports that the schools were making available to them really weren't adequate to meet those needs. So they come to a place like Pace Academy, and I had a mother crying the other day because her child with dyslexia, who was the last person out of their school at the end of the day of a standardized test, hated reading. She was in front of a group of 20 adults reading during one of our exhibitions the other day. So
Wow.
When you remove a lot of the artificial constraints, we call it the grammar of schooling, the bell system, the grades, the grade level advancement. When you remove a lot of those things, children actually can bring their full selves to the learning environment, and that's when they flourish.
How many students do you have now?
So we have 22 right now, and so we did that intentionally. We started with 2 studios we started with 10 each, and then we said, okay, we'll go up to 12 each, and we're almost there. And then next year we plan to double, and we plan to double again after that. And our maximum would be about 150 learners in our school. We see that happening within the next 5 years.
No kidding. What town or city is Pace Academy based out of, so that the listeners know?
Yeah, we're in North Chesterfield, Virginia, which is just about 10 minutes outside of the city of Richmond.
All right. Well, good. There you go. If you're living in that area and you want an alternative education format for your child, maybe it's worth looking into. Let's say we've got somebody on the line and they're thinking about maybe following in your footsteps. Like they know that they want to go into education and maybe the non-traditional education model is something they're interested in. What advice do you have for them?
I would say research what's allowed in your state. Everything is state dependent. So in Virginia, we're fortunate that pretty much if you want to start a private school, you just can start a private school. Other areas are even more permissive, and some are less permissive. So do your research. If you're looking at getting into or opening a place like this, then there are plenty of people that are interested in this, and none more so than typically the homeschool community. So if you know any homeschoolers, reach out to them, look at the state regulations, and then just look up microschooling online, and you can find a whole lot of information there. There are different networks. Like I said, we're part of the Acton Academy affiliation, but it's not the only one out there. So there are options for you.
Microschooling. That's a new term I did not know. Hashtag microschooling. Sweet. All right, man, I probably have other questions, but I know we're running a little bit tight on time, so I just kind of want to transition a little bit and ask you the same question I ask all of our guests. If there were 2 or 3 things that you wanted service members to remember as they prepare for their own transition, what are they?
I'll just double tap what I said earlier about having a board and a network of people that you can trust, that are not afraid to call you out on your own self-limiting beliefs, maybe the most part, and encourage you to go for things and to be honest with yourself. And the second thing is that there is no one right answer after transitioning out. Like there are many, many awesome paths that your life can take. And it's just a matter of, exploring and refining. And then if one doesn't work, try something different. But I would say don't do what I saw, many do, is just kind of stumble into transition. Be serious about it and check out your options. You have a lot more options than you might think.
If we have people that want to ask you other questions that we failed to ask, how can people get in touch with you and with the Pace Academy to learn more?
Yeah, so they can go to my LinkedIn profile. I'm on there, Matt Dreier. And for Pace Academy, our website is pace, PACERVA.com, pacerva.com.
Okay, outstanding. Well, we'll make sure we capture all that in the episode notes. So if you want to try and get in touch with Matt and ask questions or check out more about the Pace Academy and kind of, you've got a great website. It's very descriptive. It's got a great Q&A. You answer some questions that I didn't ask, and it's all on the website. So, hey, Matt, thanks a lot. It's been very informative. This is a different area that is definitely interesting. And I hope, and I know that there's probably a couple of listeners out there whose interest you've just piqued, and they're, I'm trying to make some meaningful change for others as they go through that stressful transition. So once again, hey, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. I'll be in touch, Matt.
All right, Chris. Thanks.
And Matt Dreier has left the virtual studio. That was fun.
That was really fun.
That was fun. I don't know if I want to become a teacher. I don't know if I want to become a school administrator, but I'll tell you what, being bold and deciding to pursue something that's meaningful and completely fundamentally different, and then recognizing there's a need. Like there's a market need. Of course, this is education. I'm not talking about creating or selling a widget or a service, but it is a service. It's an education service. And it certainly gave Matt a sense of purpose. I don't know. It was a great story.
Yeah, I think it's really forward thinking. I also think it just also shows that if you have an idea, you should just run with it and see what happens. Because, I mean, this is such a different way of education for children that, you know, it starts off as a conversation at probably the dinner table and, you know, then it look what it's turned out to be. And so that just goes to show that if you got something, go for it, see what happens. As they say, you know, throw pasta to the wall and see if it sticks, you know, then you know it's done. So I know I'm throwing noodles at the wall all the time and it's always falling. So I'm just waiting for that one to stick.
That's right. You sound like a New Yorker saying it too from Astoria. You throw the pasta against the wall.
Yeah, you throw the pasta against the wall, okay?
And then you're telling me like the Bronx Tale was filmed where you live or close to where you live?
Literally a block away. Every time I walk outside, it's nothing but the Bronx Tale all over the place. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, I love that movie. There's so many great scenes to that movie too.
Yeah.
We're probably dating ourselves. I don't know.
Hey,
that's right. We ain't talking to those Lance Corporals right now.
Whatever that means.
You don't know my pain. We go through the Marine Corps ball. The youngest Marine eats the slice of cake. You remember what happens. They say the birthday of the youngest Marine in the crowd, and all of us go, oh.
Shudder. Just complete agony.
It's just a reminder of how old we are. Well, that was great. This wraps up another great conversation. Hey, and if you're listening to us, thank you very much for listening. If you like what you heard, you can support our podcast by giving us a 5-star review on whatever app that you're listening to us. You can also follow the New Mission Career Transition podcast on any of the major apps, and you can follow us on Instagram at New Mission CT. That's New Mission Charlie Tango. We would also love to hear your feedback. You can DM us on Instagram, or you could send us an email at our address, newmissionct@gmail.com. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. I'm preparing for my transition, so if you're preparing for your own transition, I'll know that I'm right there with you. So until next time, stay focused.